Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of the Legal Pause podcast. You may ask, what's the Legal Pause? Well, it's a video podcast series that explores the issues, challenges, and opportunities that are shaping the legal profession and the charities and partners that support it behind the scenes. And each episode features a conversation between me, Nick Gallagher, I am the CEO of the Solicitors Charity, plus an invited guest. And those guests might be from the profession, from a partner organisation, or from a member of our own team or the Board of Trustees. And each person, we hope, offers a unique set of insights and a unique perspective. So far, we've had episodes with people from Lawcare and Wealthbright, with trustees and staff from the charity itself, from local law societies. And today, I'm delighted to welcome Mark Evans, the president of the Law Society. Now, Mark's been a solicitor for many years, and though on secondment at the moment, is currently a lecturer in law. And our paths first crossed back at the London Legal Walk last year. And Mark has been a great supporter of the charity in his time in office, and we're delighted that he has been and very grateful. But Mark, you're a full and frank person. You're there out on social media a lot, and we've heard a little bit about your background through that. And you've talked about coming from quite humble background, growing up in a small Welsh village, and talked about having this preconception that to be a solicitor you had to be a different kind of person and had been to a certain school and had been to university. What gave you the confidence to go out there and become a solicitor?
Hi, Nick, and thanks for allowing me to join you today for this podcast. It's a great honour and a privilege, and I'm more than happy to support the Solicitors Charity. But yeah, I think growing up, I never thought I could be a solicitor, and I had no family connections with law. Growing up in a small village, my father was a steel worker. My mother used to work as a volunteer in a local primary school, in the kitchen and on the playground. And, I never thought law was for me, but the confidence I think came from my parents. As such, they always believed in me and said that, through education, you can go on and do good things. And it was purely by chance that in my sixth form, my history teacher found me some work experience in a local law firm in a nearby town. So, and that week in that law firm really changed my life, really. That opportunity that I was given allowed me to think, well, maybe I could be a solicitor. Obviously, you then still have the issues of, are you good enough? Do you fit into the society or into the profession? And I went through my degree, and I basically was very fortunate to get a training contract in Wrexham in North Wales, and I stayed with that firm for 30 years, really. But for me, I think having qualified, obviously you still have this issue: is where do you fit in the profession as a whole? And I felt really comfortable in myself and in my ability that I had. And what I've realized now is that the profession is for everyone. And so when I'm now in my role as president of the Law Society, and I'm hosting an admission ceremony, I do always make the point every time that irrespective of our background, irrespective of our education, today we have one thing in common. Today we're all solicitors, and that's the key thing. How we get to being a solicitor is often irrelevant now. Once you are a solicitor, that's it, full stop. And I think, I'm a really keen advocate for social mobility, and I'm quite sort of want to be out there to show people that it is possible, irrespective of your background or where you may come from. And it may resonate with many people. It may not be exactly like me, but it might hopefully give hope and inspiration to those who think that maybe a career in law is not for them.
Yeah. And I was struck by you saying you'd had an inspirational teacher as well as supportive parents. I actually saw a really interesting little clip on social media this week. It's actually quite old, but it was Ian Wright, the footballer, being surprised by the one teacher at school who really believed in him. It was a very emotional film. It's great. Look it up if you haven't seen it. But it really drew out how people can be um, inspired by individuals in the way that you were, which I was fortunate enough to be inspired as well by some of my teachers. But I'm also interested in this idea that once you are a solicitor, you're a solicitor, and actually these days, background, routine doesn't matter. So I think what you're saying is, if you want to be a solicitor, give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the profession now is such a diverse profession and you can do so many different areas of law. You can find the area that suits you, whether that be in house, whether that be in a city firm, high street firm. We've got such a big membership, as you're aware. But yeah, and it's a fascinating career to have, and you can change the direction as you go through your career as well into different areas of law, or like I've done, gone into academia. So there's lots of other options you've got once you've got that initial qualification.
Yeah. And we see this with the people who come to us from help. They're from all across the profession, from large firms to sole practitioners, people who perhaps have qualified and aren't actually working in the law anymore, but they perhaps use the skills that they've gained in their current roles. But it's also a challenge for us because I think a lot of the um, wider public think, oh, solicitors, rich people working in big firms, and don't understand quite what the breadth of the profession is. Don't make the connection with the lawyers who help them, perhaps at Citizens Advice or in a law centre. Um, so it's a vast and varied world. And talking about vast and varied worlds, I'm conscious of just how much travelling you've been doing of late in your role as president of the Law Society. As I said, you're often on social media. You seem to be popping up in the Gulf, in Australia, and all sorts of places. Um, what's your take been on your time in office so far?
Obviously, it's a staggered role because for a year you are deputy vice president, then you're vice president. And when I was vice president, I did a few more sort of international engagements in Europe, as such. But now I've taken over the role as president. It's really a global position, and it's basically we have obviously 220,000 members, 12,000 of which are internationally based, and so we're a part of a global legal community. So obviously, some of my work and role is to support and promote our members who are based abroad, but equally, at home as well. So, we're also promoting the benefits of English law, in a global legal market, and the benefits of having a dual qualification as a solicitor of England and Wales. So you've got to balance the international trips, of which they're full on. It's not a holiday, I would say. It's a full-time sort of agenda that you've got, and you're very limited in time as to see much of the place where you go. But it's absolutely fascinating to meet people from around the world and share experiences. But equally, last week I was in Swansea, Newport, and Cardiff. Next week I'm heading to Liverpool and Manchester, and I've got a really wide portfolio in the coming months of going around England and Wales and meeting our members at local law societies around here as well. And obviously we engage with our sort of 4 jurisdictions in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland as well, and practitioners there. So it's a fantastic opportunity. I do post a lot on social media, as I think you're aware, but it's a diary for me. Because I do so much in a day. If I didn't record what I'm doing, I would simply forget, the following day or the following week. So it's really a record for me to look back on as well, to see where I've been and what I've done.
And what's the setup in the Law Society? How do the officers get support?
We get lots of support from the team, behind the scenes, whether that be the international team, the public affairs team, the media team, the policy team. It's about 400 people based here in the Law Society. And often, I'm the person who may be speaking on the stage, but the briefing and the work has all been done behind the scenes as such. And so you've got a lot of support, here. And the briefings are very thorough and very detailed. And, but you have to also take it all on board and be prepared for it as well. So when you go for a media interview, obviously, especially with a newspaper or, you're not sure what questions you're going to be asked. So ultimately, it's you that are there to deal with it. But the briefings are fantastic and the support is great as well. And I'm also supported by my vice president and my deputy vice president, and they'll cover areas and functions where we have clashes because we've got a lot of commitments as such. So, and that's because we've got such a big membership. But the support is really good.
What is the membership at the moment, Mark? Where are we up to?
It's about 220,000, but we're expecting by 2027 another 33,000 coming in. And that's an estimate, obviously, but we're going to be close to 250,000 solicitors, of which a third now work in house. And that when I started in 1993, in-house really wasn't an option for in-house counsel. It was high street or city, or sole practitioner route, wherever you were going. But yeah, the growth of in-house legal work now is going, and it's a global market for that as well, because many companies are international and have international legal departments. So that's a huge sort of change in the legal setup.
Yeah. And of course, that gives us a challenge as the charity for the profession, just trying to make sure that all of those soon to be 250,000 lawyers know about us. So actually, that's one of the reasons we're so appreciative of your support with your social media presence, because you help us get our name out there. And it's vital that we can do that, because otherwise we can't help people in need. But I'm just conscious that you've had this growingly crazy 3 years as you've gone up through the succession at the Law Society. That will come to an end later in the year. And how are you going to deal with the transition back to lecturing at the University of Law?
I mean, I moved into being a lecturer in 2021, and really, I think it's the same reasons as to why I went into lecturing in the first place, that I'm excited maybe as to what the future holds. I'd been in practice doing a lot of seminars and presentations for my work and for different organizations. So I really enjoyed the interaction with a live audience, shall we say. And so moving into academia has been fantastic, the enthusiasm from the students, but also what I'm excited about, and I've been doing it now in my role with our Aspiring Solicitors project, is really sharing my experiences with the next generation. And so, yes, I'm going to be maybe teaching on the solicitors qualifying exam on that, but within that context, I'll be able to share with the next generation of lawyers my experience of the Law Society and being president. And that really excites me, as to passing on information and inspiring that next generation to say that, anything is possible. I hope maybe by the time I return in November, maybe there will be tweaks or changes with certain exams and that, but obviously I'll be lobbying hard in the next few months really to see what we can achieve. But having that knowledge as a lecturer as well has really influenced my presidential themes. And so, as I say, it's the next generation that I'm really conscious of promoting and supporting.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned your presidential themes there. You're hugely interested in well-being, as of course we are, and presumably running is going to be a large part of your life when you're back at the University of Law lecturing, because it is a large part of your life, isn't it?
Yeah, It is. It wasn't. I came into running sort of late, just before my 50th birthday, really. And sort of it coincided with me sort of changing my career as well. But running is now a huge part for me, how I support my own mental health. I mean, there's lots of other ways to support mental health and well-being, and we might touch upon in the podcast, the benefits of singing, shall we say, or being in a
I
choir,
must have
or
mentioned that to you.
yeah, 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 as such. Which is again being Welsh, of course. Why
Yeah,
wouldn't I mention
absolutely.
singing as such? But there's lots of things. And I think it's important for me, this year, and with the research that Law Care have done, and with yourselves and your charity and everyone else, is that really focusing and turning people's minds on what individuals can be doing, what firms or organizations can be doing, and then what membership bodies and regulators and everyone else can be doing as well in this sector. But running for me is my escape, as such, and it gets me out the door. Sadly, in Wales, often in very wet or adverse weather. But then, once you're out there, that's sort of, it's fine. The hardest thing is actually getting up off the sofa and leaving the door, as it
Yeah,
is with most things,
yeah,
isn't it, in life?
yeah. Um, yes, one of the joys of North Wales, I guess, just as the joy of where I'm from in Lancashire, there's lots of rain, but at least it's very, very green.
That's exactly it.
And of course,
And it's beautiful.
and
It
it's
is a
beautiful.
beautiful,
And
it's a beautiful
um,
area.
I remember last year's London Lidl walk when we first had a conversation. Um, it was a glorious day, and actually being out in nature, even if it was only the royal parks in London, but being out in nature is such um, a boost to well-being and your mental state, I think. Just going back though to the sort of professional role, the representational role, you have a great presence, as we said, on social media. You're jetting around the world speaking for the profession. Um, you're not afraid to get behind some and speak about some quite difficult subjects. Um, sometimes that feels quite courageous. Where does that courage to speak out come from, do you think? And how do you pick what topics you are going to speak out about?
I I don't have a sort of list of what I'm going to say and when I'm going to say it. There's nothing that is that sort of formulated or calculated. I think for me, sometimes it will clash. Some things I will say because of an anniversary, or because of a memory, or something that will trigger me to say something. Some things it's generated by what's in the news at the time, as such. But I think it goes back to my childhood, I think, really, in that, growing up in Wales, predominantly everyone around me were from a similar background and a working class background. You just had the courage to say what you thought, and there was no sort of hierarchy, or no sort of feeling that you couldn't do anything. It was that, we support each other as a community, and we should say what we feel and have that openness. And so I think, you know, my parents obviously encouraged me and supported me, and that. Saying that, I mean, my dad was a lot more introvert, and wouldn't maybe shared his opinions until his dementia sort of came out. And then he would speak a lot more openly. And I found out more about my father when he had his dementia than, when I grew up really with him. Whereas my mum was very open, very out there, and she would let you know how she felt. And so I think I've maybe followed my mum's sort of instinct a little bit more. But, I'm not afraid to have those conversations, because, I genuinely feel that, we need to be we need to be open and transparent. We need to acknowledge where things go good or where things are going bad. So, I've through my running as well, I've supported various charities, the Alzheimer's Society, through obviously connections with dementia. We've lost three babies as such through miscarriage, and so I've supported Tommy's, the baby loss charity, and spoken openly about the impact it's had on me as a man, basically, and going back to work the very next day after having that loss, and then obviously now mental health and well-being, really, I'm really keen to have those conversations. From what I've witnessed within my own family, from what I've witnessed with my friends and colleagues, I think, you've got to be out there. And I think my social media really is a mix of things I'm doing in my professional capacity, through the Law Society or maybe as a lecturer. But I also want to make sure people realize that you're human as well, and that you have emotions and that you have feelings, and that, that I'm not frightened really to share them. I don't ever feel vulnerable by that. In fact, I feel and the messages you get privately and the messages that people will come back to you make me realize that issues are not as fully open and transparent as we would hope them to be. And I know you and other charities will find that often people bottle things up or not sharing their experiences. And for me, again, sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger than to a family member or a work colleague. And it's just getting that message over to people that talking can make a difference.
Yeah, and I've got all sorts of thoughts jiggling around in my mind from what you've just been saying. The first thing is thank you for sharing here some of the family history there and the quite traumatic events that you'll have been through as a family, but also as a man. We are constantly struck by the divide in the breakdown of the figures of people who come to us for support. Last year, the new people who came to us for support, 72% were women, only 28% were men. But what we do hear as well is we hear our case managers reporting that clients will say to them, you're the first person that's listened to us and talked to us. And I think that is a testament built to their skills, but also it recognises that we are independent, we are neutral, we're not caught up in anybody's work life, we're not talking to HR departments, we're separate from professional bodies and regulatory bodies, so people do feel they can talk to us. But not enough people are talking to us. You talked about there being 250,000 people in the profession soon. We help a few hundred people a year. Why do you think people don't feel able to come forward to talk?
I think there's a number of factors in my own view. I think sometimes it can be the work environment. And there's still obviously the pressure associated with being a lawyer, and sometimes feel, that they feel it's a weakness to maybe disclose how they're feeling or what they're doing. There's a stigma, I think, still attached to it, which is, in my, opinion, wrong to have that. But there's obviously, the profession often isn't historically used to asking for help, or acknowledging they're at that position where they need it. And often there's a pivotal issue that will happen in life, that will either, make people go one way or the other way. And I hope people always go the way of seeking help and assistance. And I think there is a huge benefit from the profession and for members speaking to people outside of their circle. And you touched upon it there, Nick, about how for the first time they feel listened to, as such, or the first time they've been able to just share their experience. And sometimes it's even sharing your experiences with your close family members is difficult because you're under pressure, or you feel that, you don't want to let anyone down. And often these pressures will lead to maybe financial problems or other health problems and everything else. And it's that spiral, isn't it, really? I think for me, it's just making sure that the support mechanisms are there. And for me this year, more than anything, I want to be signposting that there is the help out there. But I also want for role models who've been through the experience like me, maybe, or others to be more visible and to say, look, I am this person. I am the senior partner of this firm, but this has happened to me and this is what my experience is. And, you know, this is what I'm doing, to have that sort of openness, to have that communication. Now, that will take some people, it's brave for people maybe to do that. But I am seeing a lot more now of those sort of stories generating and coming through. Um, but what is happening, as I said before, there's more people coming through to it privately, which is what you would hope as well. They're messaging you privately with their saying, I've gone through that as well, and I find it difficult to talk about it. But, I'm glad that I don't feel alone anymore. I don't feel in isolation. It's that, you know, we've just got to be raising awareness of it's okay not to be okay. Is the phrase, isn't it? And sort of, that, you know, you've just got to feel somebody who are you comfortable in talking to, and sharing your experiences. And for me this year, it is purely the start of something which I hope will be an ongoing, discussion in the legal profession for years to come, because again, going back to what I said when I started in the 1990s, the pace of life in the profession is profoundly different from then and now, with technology and the mobile phones and emails and your accessibility of 24/7 and not being able to switch off. I'm sure we recall if there was no paper in the fax machine, you wouldn't get that fax. And, when you left on a Friday night, you only opened the post on a Monday morning, and that weekend was yours. Well, we're in a profession now that is literally, a full-on profession. And so conversations are going to have to be had about work-life balance and how you switch off.
And Mark, do you think that 24/7 being on, do you think that's being driven by solicitors themselves, or is it about the sort of management structures and the way that the culture of firms that's driving that?
I think there's a mixture of things. You can look at individual firms and scenarios, and sometimes it's led by the firms themselves. Sometimes it could be individual managers that are portraying their, leading by their example. But the other thing that we've seen a huge change in our profession is being driven by the consumers and our clients. And for them, obviously, they now can be emailing and contacting you 24/7. They're expecting that, their expectations are there. And I think the difficulty that solicitors have is often we're at the coalface of a transaction, and we're the ones telling the client that it's impossible for you to move house next Friday. And they'll say, "Why?" "Well, you haven't got a mortgage offer yet. We haven't got your searches. We haven't done a survey, but I want to be in next Friday." It's this sort of unrealistic expectations, I think, that some consumers or clients will have as to, because often they come to us at a later stage in a transaction. And so they've already been living and experiencing their issues for a long period of time, and they want it resolved as quickly as possible, which is natural and it's understanding. But obviously, that adds a pressure with the lawyers handling it, because there's only so many hours in the day that you should be handling your caseload.
Yeah, yeah. And just thinking about lawyers who aren't in firms, I've been interested recently to make contact with lawyers in local government and the Association of Monitoring Officers, and also Law Centres Network, and just seeing the pressures that solicitors in those settings are under, whether that's because of changes in political complexion in councils, whether it's changes to local government arrangements, just societal issues that are driving people towards sources of help, members of the public towards sources of help, and um, just continuing the pressure on those solicitors who are working in those spheres. So, as we said, a very broad profession, but
It is. I mean, I would just say as well, the Law Society, we have a mental health hub, which gives a lot of guidance for across the profession as to how really to look after sort of mental health and well-being. And you mentioned local authority and and that, but also there's a huge, as I said, in-house community now. And there's added pressures there. Often maybe you're in a very small legal department and you've got pressure from your CEO or your board of directors as to a course of action. So those are unique challenges in themselves as well, which is why having, you know, practice advice services and helplines and, charities involved to give you that support is crucial, really.
And that's a really useful prompt, Mark, because I was just going to move on to saying that, help out is out there. There's the Solicitors Charity. There is Law Care, who the Law Society and we are the two biggest funders of, and they do vital work providing helpline services to people, both solicitors in England and Wales, but also solicitors across the jurisdictions and all members of the legal professions and those who work in the law across the various jurisdictions. And those helpline services are really, really important. You've mentioned the mental health hub at the Law Society. There's the practice advice line as well. There's a solicitor's assistance scheme to help with regulatory and disciplinary issues. So there is help out there. And we can only encourage people to come along and talk to us, and it will make a difference. But how do we get that message out more widely, Mark, that there is help out there?
Okay, so when I was vice president, I chaired a working group of council about support for members facing disciplinary and investigatory procedures. And obviously, we looked at the resources and the what were out there, and you've listed everything that is there really to help and support. But we're now obviously got an ongoing project at the Law Society of visibility and increasing signposting and looking at maybe updating practice notes, and supporting our members in their times of need. And, we're very conscious at the moment that how do we get these messages out there then? Obviously, it's through the website, it's through local law societies, it's through our members sharing experiences. There's lots of ways. And I know the Law Society Council is very moved and has been moved by, listening to yourself, and your team about the experiences that you can share of what members have gone through. And that resonates, as such. And I was grateful that you and the team from Law Care joined us for our council dinner in December to share your experiences with our council members who are, 97 of them, around England and Wales, so that we can start to spread that word. Now, we're not there where we want to be yet with our, promotion and our publicity and everything else. But it's things like this with these podcasts and things this now of trying to, at every opportunity, ensuring that there is referring to the help and the support that is out there. Clearly, you know, I envisage the demand will be going up, sadly, purely based on numbers. But I do think the support that people can get is fantastic. And I think it's just raising that awareness. And so, the more, we as a society can be doing with the Law Society and through the office holders in promoting things, we'll do that. And, whenever I'm going out now on any of my tours or speaking to any member groups, I keep on saying and referring to in our wellbeing section about the support that's out there and trying to raise that profile.
Well, that's brilliant that you do that, Mark, and I'm very grateful both for that and for you joining me today. It's been fascinating to hear you speak about your life and your work and your thoughts about the profession, well-being in the profession, the direction of the profession. But to everybody who's been listening, just a reminder that we at the Solicitors Charity have 4 Rs, and you can take action simply by engaging with one of these 4 Rs. It's how you can show support. First of all, reach out to us and encourage your colleagues to reach out to us if help is needed. Come to the Solicitors Charity website, thesolicitorscharity.org, And as I've said, we offer a confidential, discreet, and independent service. Remember RCBs, unclaimed balances. Much of our income comes from this source, and it makes a huge difference to our ability to be able to provide help if we have those donations. You can register for regular updates at our website, and we'll email you with news of interest. But also, react to stories about us, and our stories, our news on LinkedIn. The more followers, the more impressions of posts, the more reach we get, the more people who'll know we're out there. So that's the end of this podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you with us, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next one.